I'm telling you, I know people who have been angry and had heart attacks. I know people who have been sad and have gotten cancer. I could go on and on and on. I know people who've been angry and sad and who got multiple forms of cancer and died. No matter what, you cannot allow yourself to stay in a state of fear, anger, or sadness. I offer a complimentary call. I'll teach you in 1 hour that we're on the phone, 1 or 2 of these skills so that you do not have to live in fear, anger, or sadness. But then the rest is up to you. You know, you have to download Howard's free prayers and do them every day. You have to do the 4 questions of inquiry that I teach. You have to do self-empathy that I teach. So that's up to you.
Thank you, Susan. So you are saying that this is essential to be peaceful. And do you mean that people really have to learn this to be peaceful at the time if they want to be healthy?
Yes. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. I am the after photo. You are not seeing the before photo. In the before photo, I looked like the cover of the Diary of Anne Frank. It was not a pretty picture. I looked terrified and sad and grief-stricken, right? So how would you feel about life if you couldn't breathe? It's all very understandable. So you cannot allow yourself, no matter what circumstances you're in, you have to push yourself up and out of those circumstances. When you see this clip that you're going to see in a few minutes, it is going to blow your mind because you're going to listen to this woman telling you what had happened and what now was the reality for her. And if you go on my YouTube channel and you look at the show when she still had stage 4 cancer, and when you look at the testimonials she did right after the doctors declared her in remission, and then you see this, you're going to go, oh my goodness. So this is possible for any of us. Any of us. And I want that to be you. I want that to be you. Because it's certainly going to be Gigi and me.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we're ready to go into this clip. Do you want to go ahead and
Perfect.
say something further?
Perfect. This is my dear friend, Christine DiBerardino. And when you hear how she was able to disconnect herself from such a terrifying disease, she was on hospice care. They basically sent her out to die. So when you hear this from her, I really hope that this will be an enormous gift for you. So enjoy it.
It's exciting to be here. Missed you, Howard. I'm standing here, so I know it worked. When I tell this story, people still have trouble believing. And if I wasn't standing here, I would have trouble believing. When I met Howard, it was September 19th, 2013. I was in the middle of treatment for stage 4 ovarian cancer. My first phone conversation with Susan was her telling me that I couldn't give any credence to the disease, that I had to start claiming that every cell in my body was radiantly healthy. That was about a month before meeting Howard. That began to make a shift. I, to this day, will not say I have or I had even. Sometimes it's a little tricky, especially when you're talking to the medical professions. But I began to say the doctors call it stage 4 ovarian cancer. And they didn't say you're going to die, because they don't do that exactly. But I remember an ER visit, and the ER doctor said, we can start palliative care, and my mother was like blown away. She goes, it's not up to him. It's not up to him. And it wasn't encouraging, and I was scared. And I still did the chemo. I did the 6 rounds of chemo. But when I had the surgery and I was on the phone with Howard a couple months after finishing chemo, I was on the phone with Howard the night before they were going in to do surgery for a hysterectomy. And the doctor said, we don't know if we're going to have to cut you wide open because we don't know what we're going to find. because the deal was 6 rounds of chemo, surgery, then probably radiation. When they went in to look around, they didn't find any cancer. They found dead cancer cells. And I knew that. I knew that when Howard worked on me in the show, I don't know if I knew it then. I just knew I walked out of here blissed out. Like I was not even walking on the ground when I left here that day after 57 minutes with Howard, never meeting him before in my life. And then I went to Center of the Heart that night, and that night I knew I was healed. I couldn't walk around and tell people that because I thought they're going to think I'm crazy, you know. But my friends and family and people have watched this, and I'm here. and I'm remarkably well, and I'm remarkably grateful. I continue to listen to Body Fantastic when I sleep at night. I did that when I was going through treatment as well. I have the prayers. I have like a 7-line version that I do, and I did it while we were sitting here waiting for the show to start. I do it constantly. I do it when I'm at work, and I love my new job. I work at the Breast Cancer Resource Center.
Wow.
And one of the clients I invited, she'll be here later. Again, I had to be careful. I can't walk in and go, oh, this man's going to heal you, you know. Like, I was thinking probably my job would be on the line. But actually, coworkers are coming tonight to Center of the Heart. People, my boss is really open. I don't think she'll be there tonight, but people are really open and receptive. And I know that when you're open and receptive, the healing will happen. I think the healing will happen whether they're open and receptive
Yes.
anyway.
Yes.
But, you know, you got to put yourself in the place to receive. So
Thank
I'm
you.
just really,
Thank
really,
you
really
so much.
grateful. Thank you so much. And it's all about forgiveness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, and prayer.
Such a wonderful woman, such a wonderful woman. So she shifted so quickly. That was the amazing thing. And why? Why did we on the planet Earth have to learn the hard way? I don't know. Why do we have to be in so much pain and so terrified and something so horrible staring us in the face before we decide we're going to do something different? I really don't know. But there's just one of many, many examples of a miraculous outcome.
That was a great clip. I'm glad you chose that for us. Can you explain now how you work with the client with a serious health issue?
There are a number of different traditional experts that I send people to if that's the only thing that they understand and are willing to do. And I have some great, 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 great doctors and medical health in all different areas. So that's a wonderful thing. And then you've seen to some degree, you've heard me talk about how I work with people like Christine who are very open to alternative healing such as Howard. And the key is controlling your mind. This is what I discovered myself. How did I survive all those years when I really couldn't breathe ever? I just really couldn't breathe ever. I couldn't breathe normally. If I was on medication, I was half asleep. If I was on different kind of medication, I was like, you know, adrenaline junkie. So how did I function? I controlled my mind. I knew that I was not that illness. I knew that I was not those symptoms. I already knew that I was not my body, that I am the soul that inhabits all this stuff. So little by little, my own personal evolution took over. And that is what you need to do. If you're suffering, if you're struggling with any life issue, whether it's health or anything else, you have to become senior to your mind. You can't control your mind. Now, in Christine's situation, I gave her that phrase, every cell in my body is radiantly alive. And I used to say that, I created that phrase, and I used to say that. Since I knew that my cells weren't getting enough oxygen, I was doing everything I could to enhance the life force in my body. I've studied with many of the great enlightened masters. I've been to India 57 times. I went to lots and lots of medical doctors and lots of alternative doctors. The bottom line is, how do you activate those cells in your body to keep yourself healthy? And that is a phrase that I find very, very successful. So you might want to adopt that too.
Wonderful. You've been through this, Susan. You're really a gift for us. Is it easy for someone to change their way of thinking about health so that they can enhance their health?
Well, this is the tricky part. And I would say, I want you to understand, I have worked with people who have gone into remission through the work that we did together. They have even been grateful to me for the work that we did together and the result they got, and had no interest in doing any more work on themselves. No interest in continuing to do the prayers. So why? This is brain patterning, that's all. They have a program that's different from my program. They have a program that animates them that's different from what animates Gigi. You know, my program tells me that I have to look outside the box if what's inside the box isn't powerful enough. And I have to keep looking outside the box for new and better solutions if I haven't found the solutions that I'm using to be successful. That's the way my brain was, programmed by my family. The lineage, the genetics, the ancestors, and the environment as well. So you are just a program, and the sooner you take a look at what that means, the sooner you take a look at the things you do that don't work, and the things that you don't do, that if you started to do differently, they would work, then you're going to start to realize what's programming and what's not. And that's a huge breakthrough for you.
Imagine paying attention like that.
It's huge.
That's wonderful. Now, how challenging is it for most people to really control their minds so that they can create the healthy future that they really would desire?
Took me $1 million. So all those seminars, intensives, retreats, workshops, yeah, it takes a lot of time. But the good news is that, as I say, I did all that so you don't have to. Because I teach now the skills and the tools that I find to be most effective to allow people to have those breakthroughs and continue to have those breakthroughs. But it's up to you, because I really pressed one of my clients who I love. I pressed her to go to a Howard Wills event on Sunday, and she did. And I had pressed her 2 years ago. And she had gone 2 years ago and hadn't kept up much of this work in 2 years. And so now, if she wants the results that she wants, thank God she's completely healthy. So it's about different life goals. It's not about health. But 2 years ago, she could have operated differently, and then family members would have had greater health by now. So, we affect everybody around us. That's important to remember.
Big responsibility. Now, what is one of the most important skills that you teach to promote health for people?
The 4 questions of inquiry is a way to discontinue a habit of living in fear, anger, and sadness. So if you're telling yourself a story that you'll never get healthy, or you'll always have those symptoms, or you'll always have that disease, or the doctors were right, you're going to die. Any of those things, those are stories you tell yourself. So now, whether you were programmed by your parents, your grandparents, your doctors, the nurse, who knows? We're programmed all the time. But the whole key to life is to unhook yourself from the programming. So you write the story. So the story, and I'm going to be very careful, because I don't want to make up a story that I'm now going to say I am or I have. I'm going to be very careful, because I don't even joke around about things like that. But if I were to say that, you know what, it's so difficult, because only if you have this. So I'm going to put this in the third person or the second person, not the first person. So if Jane says, third person. If Jane says that she will always suffer from bipolar disorder, this is a real person, and she believes that she will never have a normal, happy life because she suffers because they've diagnosed her as bipolar. And let's say I was working with Jane. So I would then say, well, write that story down. I'll never enjoy a happy, healthy life because I've been diagnosed as having da da da. Question number 1, is that true? Do you believe that's true, Jane? She would say, yeah. You might say maybe. If it's something horrific, maybe is better than yes. So maybe. Okay. Now here's the second question. What evidence do you have, Jane, that this diagnosis that you've been given is accurate? And she will say, well, she behaved this way and that way, and 6 of her friends told her that they read on the internet, it sounds like that's what it is, and she's been taking lithium that the doctor gave her because lithium is the drug they give people with bipolar disorders, etc., right? That's evidence. Now, if you don't have facts like that, then you may be able to say this story isn't even true just at the beginning, and then stop working on that story and look at another story underneath that would be more peaceful and more powerful and more true. But in Jane's case, she seems to have a lot of evidence that this diagnosis is accurate. So question number 3, how do you feel when you tell yourself, Jane, that you have this diagnosis, that it's accurate? Well, Jane feels frightened, she feels furious, and she feels hopeless. And those symptoms of the drug lithium are not as bad as the disease itself, and they're pretty awful. So question number 4, how would you feel, Jane, if I could show you that there was a better feeling story that's more true, more peaceful, and more powerful? Well, in this case, with someone like Jane who has a legitimate set of symptoms for which there is a legitimate medication that really does eliminate the symptoms, in her case, I might say, well, one way to turn this around is, Susan, now that I've been diagnosed with such and such a thing, I choose to take this medication since I have seen that it is remarkably effective and I feel better. And now I'm also choosing to have Howard Wills work on me to see if I can be one of the millions and millions of people who he's worked on whose symptoms just disappeared. So that's a way for Jane to tell the truth, to be rational, to be practical, and also to be a visionary and do something that is outside the box, because she literally has nothing to lose. There you go.
Beautiful. And it's easy. You're very helpful, Susan.
Thank you.
Now, I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to say, have you ever had success with someone who seems convinced that they cannot get well?
This is a tricky thing. No. You can't have success with someone who is convinced they can't get well. What you can have success with is shifting their belief that they can't get well. So you can do the wellness first. You have to deal with the hopelessness. So I had a woman who was referred to me, and this was years ago when I first moved to Santa Barbara, and she asked if she could see me in person. I said, yeah, it seemed very important to her. Okay, and she said, can I bring my dog? And you guys know probably by now that I just love dogs. So I said, sure, yeah, sure. And she sat on my sofa and she was telling me about her health issues, in her case, her mental health issues. And she told me that she had ordered a suicide kit and that if I couldn't help her, no worries, because the suicide kit would be arriving any day. And believe me, it was a feat of great acting, and I deserved the Meryl Streep Award because I just kept my face in a completely neutral space. And then I started to give her a lot of empathy. Well, I imagine, Linda, that you just feel so hopeless, that you can't feel healthy and really happy enough. And it sounds as if you just feel so desperate that with all the things you've tried and all the different meds and everything you've done, you just still don't feel good. You don't wake up in the morning feeling good. You don't enjoy the way you feel in your body during the day. And then at night you go to sleep and you're just afraid of another day when you don't have your health. Is that right? Do I understand? She said, yes. I said, well, there are a lot of people I know. There are a lot of experts I know. There are a lot of skills I know. And we're going to get you through this. It's going to take some time, though. So I'm going to need you to just trust that there are things I know that you don't know. And then I am perfectly willing to offer you each and every one of them. And I need you to put that strategy with the kit on the back burner so that you can really focus on this. And years later, the woman was still alive and the dog was still alive and everything was fine. And I then, at some point, worked with her and her new boyfriend. And she was going to the doctor I recommended, Patricia Fitzgerald, who is the founder of the Santa Monica Wellness Center, whose center has amazing doctors with incredible results. So again, whether you're interested in a totally outside the box method like Howard, or whether you want me to send you something that's much more logical and you can understand it, that's fine. It's about you getting well. It doesn't matter how you get well.
Another success story. What about people who continue to fight with a family member or with someone else in their life?
Well, the two closest people to me died exactly that way. First, they got one form of cancer. They were each in a very lengthy lawsuit, each of them. So first, they each got one form of cancer, and they had medical treatment and got over that. Then they had a second form of cancer and had medical treatment and got over that. And the third form of cancer killed him. So, you know, and actually in Alexis's case, before he had the first form of cancer, his PSA was very, very high, and he was worried that he was going to get prostate cancer. And Howard actually worked on him, and his PSA numbers became normal. So it was just that he couldn't imagine that health could be affected by someone in silence over the telephone. He couldn't wrap his brain around it. And he continued this lawsuit, and he continued to fight, and he continued to be very, very angry. And he ultimately won $750,000. It was $1 million lawsuit. Took him like 5 or 6 years. He won $750,000 and lost his life. So, you know, I have to say that I have too much evidence that whatever you're fighting for, it probably isn't worth it. It probably just isn't worth it.
Thank you, Susan. That's a lot to pay attention to. Now, sometimes it seems that people have to end a relationship before they can be healthy. Would you agree that they should do that?
There are people in relationships where arguing and bickering is like the wallpaper. And in addition to Alexis fighting with one of the online trading companies for this $1 million, he was in a relationship with a woman who suffered from many, many symptoms, whatever they might be called. She had a lot of symptoms. And one of them was that she was constantly fighting and bickering and fighting and bickering and threatening and fighting and bickering. So in both sides of his life, he had this. And it certainly didn't help. It certainly didn't help. And the same thing is true of my best friend, Linnea, who you knew all about. She was in this ongoing lawsuit with her contractor that went on for years and years. And she was fighting with her husband. And she had cancer and he was smoking. And she had cancer and he was smoking, and on and on. And if either of those dear, dear people in my life had terminated the relationships they were in, there's no way of knowing if they would be alive today. And it certainly would have taken an enormous burden off their immune system. That we know. Now, if they had ended those relationships and also terminated the lawsuits, and they both had plenty of money. The tragedy of this is that neither of them needed the money. It was a question of what they called justice. And there is no justice in the court system anyway. So if you're fighting for justice, you might as well drop it immediately, because your health is much more important than the justice that you're probably never going to see, because that's not what the court system is for.
Very true stories, very enlightening. Is it really worth it? Now,
No. Not that I've ever seen. I haven't seen it be worth it.
the evidence. Now, for true lifelong health, what is a recipe that always works for us?
So I have to make myself happy, right? I have to bring myself up to happy, positive expectation and belief. So if I'm on the phone with a client who has horrific problems, I don't get to carry those problems around. I can be working on the solutions. So I get off the phone with one of you, you're going through something, you've just started working with me, we need to turn that around. I don't get to carry the emotional affect with it. I can look at how I can save that client from an abusive marriage, how I can save that client from an abusive relationship, how we can turn those relationships around so those clients to decide if they want to stay or if they want to go. I'm doing that all day long. I'm thinking about it at night and in the middle of the night. I just don't carry the fear, anger, and sadness with me. I don't carry it because I don't pick it up from them. Now, if something happens in my personal life where I got triggered, and I'm human, so I get triggered, you know, if somebody looks at me funny or somebody cuts me off on the highway or whatever it is, I have 4.5 minutes or less to bring myself to peace, which I did in the middle of a car accident and didn't even have a bruise, and the car was totaled. So I know that this stuff works. So self-empathy, and then if you find you're making up the same story again and again, the 4 questions of inquiry, because the story is flawed. The whole story is a mess that has to be eliminated. And if you want to learn self-empathy, we have it on so many of our shows. I don't think we have time tonight. And just send me an email if you'd like, and I'll send you the self-empathy exercise in an email.